Like, and then we have next talk by 1:30.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have ample amount of time, between 1 and 1:30. If we are getting extra questions.
Sure, sure. You can do it.
Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome to the online talk of FOSHAC. So today we have Shakti Kanan. So he'll be talking about free and open source career with free and open source software. So Shakti is he is a research into sorry like he is a researcher at IIT Madras, and he is a promoter of open source software, and he'll be taking the presentation from now onwards. Thank you, Shakti. You can start.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear you.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I hope everyone is keeping safe and doing well. So this presentation is available online, so you can download this from my website as well. Um, and this is freely available under a CC license. So you're welcome to share it with your friends, colleagues, and everyone interested in free labor and open source software. So I don't have a lot of slides, and that's intentional because I do want to take in as many questions as possible. So I will go through the slide deck that I have right now, and then we can have a Q&A session following this. So you can also tweet. My online presence goes by the name Shaktiman. So I have been in the free software and open source group for quite some time now. And I do want to mention the book that I have written here, which is to get students and professionals get started in working with free and open source software. So I would definitely encourage you to read that. So with that, let's get started with the main topic on building careers with free, libre, and open source software. So I do want to approach this question using the W's and the hows. And the first W is, why do you want to work with this ecosystem, with this community, and all the tools that are available? Um, Different people have different perceptions and objectives. And this community is quite transparent. And one of the prime motives to be able to work in this community is that people recognize you for the work that you do. There is a lot of transparency in this whole workflow that we have. The communication is quite open. Most of the time, we will have some a mailing list or forums or internet-related chat where you have these discussions happening. And you have an opportunity to work with people from different backgrounds, from different countries, living in different time zones. So there is a good opportunity to learn from the experiences of different people. So there's always a constant feedback that comes that's given to you, and you get a different perspective of the topics that you're working with. In our industry, learning is a continuous process. It doesn't stop. We have to continuously work and improve our skills. And being able to work on cutting edge and a wide variety of tools gives you an opportunity to grow as part of the project or the team or the organization, and also helps you improve in your career. The network is also quite broad in the sense that you need not necessarily have to travel to a different country to work and get the experience. But using these online communication tools, you have the opportunity to work with diverse people. Right? So the prime focus is learning, getting recognized for the work that you do. And during this course, of course, you'll get a job, you'll get paid, you'll be able to travel to conferences and events. And those are all the additional perks that you will benefit from working in this ecosystem. Yeah, so there are a lot of benefits, and we will go through the different tools and mechanisms in this presentation. Now, who should be involved in this community? You could be students who are studying in school, or you are working in the industry, or you could be part of some government organization. A lot of organizations and entities today use free and open source software. It is not just that the software is free. Here we mean free as in freedom, where you have the ability to download the source code. You can make modifications to the source code. You can distribute the changes as long as you give credit to the original authors of the code, right? So the important thing to understand is the free and open source software is also licensed software. Okay? Everything comes with a license such as the GPL license or the MIT license, which gives you the permission to distribute the software yourself. Okay? So irrespective of whether you are in the academia or in the industry or government, or you're working for some NGO organizations, you are welcome to use the software, learn from it, and also distribute it freely. So there is no restriction as to who should use it and who should not use it, right? So it's all freely available online, and you can use it for your day-to-day use. The important thing about contribution is that first thing is that you should be a user of the software. Okay, so once you decide that, okay, this is my area of interest, and let's say I want to focus on some application development, it could be maybe something like the GNU image manipulation program where you want to work on photo editing software. You can download GIMP and start using it. And once you become a user of the software, then you start focusing on how you can contribute back to the software. So before contribution is to first be a user of the software. So irrespective of where you're coming from, which background you are, it is important to first use the software and then you start contributing to it. When should you actually start? If you have not started yet, this is a good time. It's never late to start anything, and it's important that you invest some time and energy in learning the tools of the ecosystem, learning the communication aspects, and how to work with all of these things in the community. So if you've already been working, it is good. It is good to have a long-term roadmap and a short-term milestones that you want to achieve, and then work towards those. So it is never late to start. And if you've just heard about free and open source software now, it is a good time for you to get started right now. So what is these projects and where do you actually sort of find them, and what are the different tools available? So generally you will find most of these projects available in source control management tools like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. People will have blogs where they talk about the projects that they are working with. You will also find information on social media. A lot of these projects do have specific communication channels like internet relay chat, Gitter, and so on. So learning to use these communication channels becomes very important. Of course, there are a lot of conferences that happen in India and internationally, and trying to attend those events and interacting with people will give you an opportunity to learn what is currently happening in different areas of interest, different open source free software projects, what people are working on, what are the current problems that they're trying to solve, and so on. There are also meetups that are held in different cities, like once a month, depending on which city you are. Sometimes there are user-specific group meetings also that are organized. For example, a specific programming language community will have their own meeting once a month. So it's good to participate and network using all of these channels. And gives you an opportunity to meet those people and learn from them. So what are the different areas in a project that you can actually contribute to? Not everyone needs to be a developer. There are a lot of areas that you can focus depending on your skill set and your interest. So some people are very good in writing and doing documentation work. So you can definitely work on improving, say, the user guide or the developer manual for a project. Or if you're good in multiple natural languages, you can help in doing translation work. For example, translating the menu interface of an application, right, into different natural languages. If you are very good in speaking, you can help with the marketing of the project. A lot of free and open source projects have a community edition and an enterprise edition. So the enterprise edition is sort of for people who are requiring support and long-term maintenance, and you can have a business model around it, right? So you can help in those areas as well. Some of you might be very good in doing design work using tools like this GNU image manipulation program for photo editing, or doing vector diagrams using Inkscape, for example. So if you're very good in design, art, fonts, and so on, you can actually contribute to the artwork of the project. Today, infrastructure is very important in terms of hosting websites, maintaining servers. So if you are interested in the operations side of things, you can contribute to maintaining the different project issue trackers, websites, mailing list, and so on. So you can also contribute on that side. Of course, when it comes to software, it is packaged. So different distributions have different packaging formats that they use. For example, RPM-based distributions like Fedora and Red Hat use RPM format, and Debian-based distributions use the .deb format. And so you can help take the source.ball of a upstream project and make it into a binary that is made available to a distribution. Of course, coding and testing are also an integral part of any project. So there are different ways in which you can contribute to a project, and depending on your interest, right, you should pick one and use that to work with the project and contribute to it. So there are domains and there are designations, right? So you need to first identify the area of your interest, whether it is computer networking or gaming, or it's working on operating systems, or even teaching, right? Accordingly, there are specific designations that are available. So what you need to do is, if you are coming to the industry or in academia or working for government organizations, you need to identify the area that you're interested in and see for what job designations, what is that is required, right? So for example, if I take the example of a DevOps engineer, right? So you could be working on infrastructure projects for a free and open source project. Say you're working for Nginx, right? You want to you're contributing to the web server implementation, and then people might hire you for your experience in managing web servers, how you set up firewalls, how you set up configuration files, how you set up monitoring, alerting, and so on. So find your area of interest and then look at the available job designations that are there today, and then look at what requirements they have. And then you need to see from your skill set, what is it that you need to learn in order to satisfy those requirements. Of course, that's just one example. So depending on different job designations and roles, you'll have different requirements that are defined. So these open source projects have different tools, as I mentioned. So there are forums and mailing lists that are available. Of course, internet relay chat has been there for many decades. Every project has a bugs or issue tracker, Bugzilla, for example, where you can see the list of bugs that are available. Some bugs are marked as starter tasks. So if you're new to a project, you can just pick up those specific bugs and you can start working on them. There might also be a release schedule for every project. They might use different tools for their roadmap. This is some few examples like Redmine and Task Juggler. And of course, there's documentation for a project. So they might use some form of wiki, or today it could just be a README file or a Markdown file in the project. Of course, source control to manage the different releases in the code base. So these are different tools that are part of the project, which you should become familiar and learn to use these tools to work with them. So this is a screenshot of Internet Relay Chat, IRC for short. So here, this is Xchat that is running. At the bottom, you see a list of channels or rooms, however you want to call them. And then you have a list of users on the right, and then you have discussions going on. So whenever you are connected to the internet, we encourage you to log into IRC. You don't need to participate in conversations, but just listening to these conversations will help you learn a lot of things. Good communication tool that is quite useful. And you'll also get to meet people from different countries, and it gives you a wonderful exposure to learn from each other. It is purely text-based, so you don't need a lot of bandwidth to use these tools. So how do you go about choosing a project? So the first thing is you identify the area that you are interested in, and first start using the software, right? And then you want to understand what the project tools are being used, what are the documentation tools, the communication channels that are being used, how is the project being documented. So you install the software, you use the software, and you start testing it, right? And then you look at the, say, the bugs or the issue tracker and find out what is it that you can pick to start solving them. And if you get stuck, you can always ask in the respective communication channels. For the long term, I would definitely recommend finding a mentor in the project who's been there working on different modules and engage in the different team meetings, right? So once you slowly start fixing bugs and thinking and learning how the code base is, and you start updating the issues and working with these people, you'll slowly start to recognize the work that you're doing. And of course, as you learn more about the tools and the projects, you will be given more access and responsibilities. So it's a good way to engage yourself with the project and also grow individually as well as contribute to the project. So this Operation Blue Moon, I started a few years ago to get people into a discipline of time management. So you can find more information on this on the GitLab site. So this is an example of Bugzilla. So you have for every project, there will be an instance that is running. So this is an example of the K desktop environment where you have different bugs that have been filed. They have an ID, which component of the project which is involved in it, is anybody assigned to that, summary, and so on. So you can pick one, and you could first start to triage the bug. Triaging is reproducing the bug on your side to confirm that the bug actually exists. That's the first step. And then you can go through the code and see exactly what is causing the bug. That is the second step, to identify the cause of the problem. And the third step is to actually try to find a fix for it. So that's one way in which you can start to enter into a project and explore the code base. So this is an example of a change request in GitLab. The changes are not important, but when I talked about transparency, what we see here is that every change that you make to a project is publicly available. And hence, when you have your resume and when you say that I have worked in this project, people can actually go and look at your comments, and then they can ask you why you made this change, what was the thinking behind this change, and so on. And this basically is a way of people knowing that you are able to work in these areas and you made these changes in a project. So this is a proof that you have contributed to the project, right? So this is very important. And a lot of technical teams and reviewers usually like to see your changes that you're making, and having a GitHub or GitLab or any public website is actually quite useful. So when it comes to assessment, so it's a very nice saying here. The only person you should try to be better than is the person you were yesterday. So the competition is actually to reflect on yourself to see how much you have progressed the last 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, right? And where do you want to see yourself in the next 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year? And the comparison should be how you are doing over time. And that assessment and retrospection is very, very important. So it's never late to start. So I would definitely encourage you to start and contributing to these projects as soon as possible. There are some references here, some very good material that I have found useful, and I hope it's useful to you as well. So those are the important slides that I had, which I wanted to share. So this ends my presentation. I'm happy to take questions now. Thank you.
So that was a great session, Shakti. So I think we'll start the Q&A, and we have got one question in YouTube live chat. So Aryan is asking, how do you know that you are actually good in a domain and that you should make that as your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way to decide is you need to ask yourself, what is your passion? Ask yourself, what is it that you would work, say, late nights? What is it that you would work hard on weekends or put extra time to work on it? No, you need to find your passion. And that is your area of interest. So generally, if you take your undergraduate education experience or whatever it is, you actually have a lot of subjects that are actually being taught. And the reason is that they do that is to give you an exposure of the different areas. Like it could be databases, it could be programming languages, it could be mathematics, it could be any subject. So they give you a flavor of the different subjects, and then you could take that as an example and see which is it that you really liked or enjoyed working or studying, right? So that should be your prime focus and area of interest. Okay, don't do things because others are doing it. That's not the way to do it. You need to identify your passion or interest, right? For me, it's like I would say a very good example I would give is like, how do you decide which is your favorite ice cream? Right? You try chocolate, you try vanilla, you try strawberry, you try pista, and then from all of these choices, then you pick something that you like, and you have more of it because you like that, right? So I would suggest you try different areas, and then you see which one do you really like and enjoy working with, and that will be your passion or area of interest.
Cool. Yeah, so I think Aryan has got his answer. And next we have any framework for self-assessment, Kurian Benoit?
Yes, so that's a good question as well. So I basically started this Operation Blue Moon project many years ago. And a lot of people are actually using that. I would definitely recommend you to go to that GitLab website. So what we do there is we maintain our long-term plan and short-term plan in Emacs org files, which are basically plain text files. So what we do is we have these sprints, which may be run for like a couple of weeks or something like that. Sometimes 10 days, sometimes 13 days, sometimes 17 days, and so on. So what we do is we have a long-term plan. It's all public, by the way. You can go and check out some of the long-term plans that some of these people have, and they break. It's the divide and conquer algorithm, right? So you have a long-term vision, and then you break down into smaller goals, and then you map those goals into the sprints that we have, which runs every few weeks. And then currently people are mostly working on reading and improving their knowledge. So this gives a way by which they track how much time they have spent, what are the estimated time that they have set for each task. And then right now we don't have the statistics module built into it right now, but the data is available. And then you can use that to assess and what is the focus in the next 3 months, and where do you want to be in the next 2 to 3 years. So that is available, and the reason it is public is because there is some level of transparency and accountability, right? If you put things public, obviously you have some responsibility, right? So it sort of gives you a way of saying, hey, I need to get these things done, and then I need to update these task files, I need to update the clock time, I need to see how I'm doing. So it sort of forces you to come into some sort of a discipline to get things done, basically. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. I've tried different tools like the task juggler and other things, but I've really not found something that is suitable to my style of work. And the Emacs org files with this Operation Lumen is something that I've been using. I think it must be more than 10 years now. So I would ask you to give that a try and take a look at it.
So Blue, he has got his answer. Another question by Kurian itself. What type of companies should people join?
Okay, so I would first ask you to read this paper, The Cathedral and the Bazaar by Eric Raymond. There are generally two types of organizations that you will see. One is the cathedral style of design. The other one is the bazaar style of company operation. So the cathedral style are where you have different hierarchy levels. Like you may be a developer, and then there may be a lead, then there may be a manager, there may be a senior manager, there may be a director, a VP, and so on. There is the bazaar style where there are a lot of startups where they are pretty having a flat organizational structure, right? So the small teams, coherent teams, everybody talks with everybody else. And you can even go ahead and talk to the CEO or CTO of the startup and talk freely. So that's a more open, closed, coherent team of working. So there are two general styles that you will see in the industry. I would encourage you to try both. Work in a big organization and see how it is, work in a startup and see how it is, and then you can decide how you want to grow in your career. But some people are more suited to the startup culture. Some people are more geared towards the management style, cathedral, hierarchical style of working. So it depends on what is your comfort zone. There is no definite answer. Some people like the bazaar style, some people like the cathedral style. So that's just a personal preference. But I would encourage you to try both, get some experience, and then see how it is.
Yeah, cool. So there are many questions coming. Could you how to choose license? How to choose a license? Could you please elaborate on how one should go about choosing their license when they are getting started on a project? Also, it would be great if you could shed light on how license can be used to build companies around them.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't get the full question.
How do you choose a license? How to choose a license? So
license, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not a lawyer, honestly. So generally, people go with MIT or MIT X11 license, GPL or BST license. Um, Most companies will have a legal team, so or maybe the CTO or CEO is quite familiar with it. Um, if you're starting a project, then you have the liberty of choosing a license that you want. But if you're joining a project that already has a license, then you have to go with the license. Some licenses are not compatible with others. Let's say that you are pulling in a dependency library that has a different license. You might have to check with your legal team whether you can link it, what type of linking is available, what can be distributed, and so on. So that is better left to the management or the legal team, and it's best that they decide on that.
Yeah. So, how do you see a FOSS being adopted by academia in India? Is it good or bad? What can be done to improve it?
There are a lot of professors and faculty who are actually do good work with the free and open source software, and a lot of them also participate in these kind of events and conferences. So the thing with this community is it's quite widespread, and of course there is we need more people involved. The more, the better. And I've had the opportunity of working and interacting with a lot of these faculty people from all over India, and they're very passionate about what they do. They try to use free and open source software in the labs, in the curriculum. So it's not 100%, but we will get there. So everybody's effort and initiative, talking about it, working with it is actually quite helpful. So when I studied in India, I mean, we didn't have all of these events and conferences, and today you have the opportunity to participate in these events and hackathons, which is actually a good sign that things have changed, right? So we have to acknowledge that, but at the same time, we need to keep our focus and we need to continue to make people aware of open source software and learn to use it, and most importantly, contribute to it.
Yeah. So, Ayush is a second year undergrad. So he's asking what he should be focusing in order to crack GSOC, Google Summer of Code.
Yeah, so that's a very common question that
Yeah.
people ask me. Actually, we don't. I'll tell you the difference between hacking and cracking. Okay, it's very important because the terminology is very, very important. So in engineering or in academia or in free software and open source cultures, hacking is actually a good thing. What we mean by hackers are people who solve technological problems, who want to push technology to the forefront, and they're very eager in solving complex problems, right? The people who break into networks, bring down servers, they're all called crackers. So Eric Raymond, who wrote this Cathedral and the Bazaar article, has also written another article on how to become a hacker. This is the hacker in the original sense, the one in the MIT hacker culture. You'll read more about it in the Free as in Freedom, Richard Stallman's Crusade for Free Software book as well. And this is the hacker culture, and that is the mindset that we want people to have. Unfortunately, it so happened that the general public opinion is that hacking is bad. It's actually not. So when it comes to engineering and all these communities that we belong to, hacking is actually a good thing. So we don't do cracking, right? We want to promote use of technology. We want to solve challenging problems, and that's what we're interested in. So the important thing with GSOC is that it is important for you to go through the learning experience. It is not getting into GSOC that is most important. what is important is what is that you've learned by working in a project. You don't need to get into GSOC to contribute to a project, right? Yes, it is good to have it in your resume, but try to focus on how you can solve the problems or issues that are having in a project. Once you start doing that, right, people will recognize you. The most important thing I talked about in the beginning of the presentation is the motivation that people recognize you. Okay, and when you do good work, people will recognize you. They'll offer you job offers, and everything will come. Everything will fall into place. So the focus should not be getting into GSOC. The focus should be what is it that I can do to contribute to the project, right? Am I adding value to the company that I'm working with, right? So when people need things to be done, they want to look at those who can deliver things, right? So your focus is, or the approach that I would take is, right, if I'm contributing to this project, I can give this proposal to GSOC, and then I can convince them to say, I've been working on these issues so long. I've had these tools that I'm familiar with. I have these skill sets. I want to work in this particular problem for this GSOC time period. And then I would want to continue to work in the project, right? So generally, if you're working in a project or an organization, I would say working at least 3 to 4 years. I mean, really deep dive in a project is actually a good time frame to learn something, right? So just getting into GSOC to me is not the it's a very narrow approach. You should look at the long-term approach and saying, can I continue to work with the project after GSOC? And with that experience, you will have enough contacts that they might even hire you, right? Companies might hire you based on your experience. So the focus is always on how you can best add value to the project, to the organization, and that should be the focus. If you lose that focus, if you become greedy, if you go for money, fame, and all that, then I don't think it will last very long. So the focus should be different.
Yeah. So next question from Yash. How relevant are the open source contributions for getting a job, and companies prefer lead code question?
For companies that prefer?
Lead code question, that's like online programming questions, like hacker.
Okay. So the approach that I would take is once you have these contributions that you have in your resume, your GitHub profile or GitLab profile, what is very important is that you talk to the actual team that you're going to work with. Who's going to be your manager, right? You need to actually interact at that level, right? That is where all of these events and conferences actually really help, because you start to build your network, the social network, right? So once you build that, you actually talk to leads or managers or directors or CTOs who you're going to interact on a day-to-day basis. So once you have their acknowledgement that they see you as a value addition to the project or the team or the company, then it becomes very easy to hire you, right? So the focus and objective should be to see what is it that you're going to do on a day-to-day basis, what are the tasks that you're going to work with, and whom are you going to work with. So I would approach it like that, right? So you need to talk to the right people, and you need to talk to the actual team members who you're going to interact on a day-to-day basis. And it's those people whom you need to show your resume to. And that's when they actually see that whether you can contribute or not to the project. You're adding value to the company, to the organization, and hence they see you as a fit to the organization.
Yeah. We have, I am third year PhD candidate working on developing my own simulation module for nano photonic simulation. Okay. As a starting point, I started learning about how different people across the globe have contributed. Could you suggest if that is a good approach, or I am missing something?
I think you should ask that to your advisor. Um, I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm the right person to answer that question. Um, you so when you are a graduate student, the first and foremost thing is to follow your advisors, whoever is in your uh, committee who's reviewing that, and follow their advice because they are the best experts in their area. So I would definitely of course, you can ask around in whatever tools and projects that are using those simulation, but I would definitely follow the your committee and advisors' instructions because they are the experts in that area.
Okay, can you Linux Gurukulam? Okay, so okay, no. So can you please elucidate on how to generate revenue from FOSS? So how to generate revenue from FOSS?
Yeah. So a common question that people ask is, okay, you're giving the software for free, so how do you make money out of it? So, so money is not everything. It is important, but it is not everything in life. And there are different business models that you can use to make money out of this. So one such model is providing services around the tools and the software because not everybody is a developer, but they might find a specific software, maybe an ERP application, or it could be a web application that is useful. And you could provide it as a service. Maybe you have a subscription model and you can ask customers to pay for technical support, maintenance, and so on. Or they maybe want to add a new feature, and it could be you can charge a price for it. You will still release the source code um, depending on the license. So basically, technical support, maintenance. You could charge for training, for example. A lot of people are full-time trainers. They give training to people to use the software. So there are different business models that are available, and you can just pick one that is suitable for you. And yeah, a lot of organizations today do use free and open source software heavily, and they want people who know how to work with these tools because it's not just the cost, the free cost, right? It's also the quality of the work and the code that is being delivered, and that's just it's just a wonderful community to be in.
Yeah. We have got a few more questions from like previously, like is it
Sure, go
true
ahead.
that okay, yeah, is it true that open source software tends to be of low quality because it is done by hobbyists for free and not by professionals?
So there are also commercial organizations that heavily invest in open source, free and open source software, like the Linux Foundation, for example. They have actually taken over a lot of projects where they pay people to work on that. That's just one example. There's so many organizations. So today, a lot of events and conferences are possible because companies are investing a lot on these projects, and they are running their business on some of this huge software. So, of course, Linus Torvalds wrote the Linux kernel as a hobby, but um, I wouldn't say that all software are still hobby projects. There are big enterprise projects um, funded by mega corporations and running on free and open source software. So, I wouldn't fully agree with the statement. There are people who do hobby projects as well, just for learning sake. But today we do have uh, a really big community, and which is backed up by uh, big industry corporations.
Yeah, yeah. So like one more question. Yeah, I have been contributing to open source for a while, but my contributions are limited to typo fix, documentation, etc. How can I find projects where I can contribute actual code?
So, what I would ask is, what is the skill sets? I mean, that's a good start. You're starting to understand the type, the documentation aspects of the project. But then, what is the skills that you really need to learn? Have you used that software? Have you tried that software out? Do you see some feature that is missing that you would like to add? Then you see what are the programming languages that are being used in that project. Then you start to learn those languages, and then you start to test those features. Then you see how to add those features to the project. So it's a step-by-step process. But if you like doing documentation, you do documentation. You don't have to necessarily do coding. And there are a lot of people who do full-time documentation. There are technical content writers who are employed by companies who full-time job is to maintain the manuals, and which is actually very important because it's not just the developer guides, right? There are also users who look at software and um, they need to know how to use it. This is a new feature that comes in. They need to know how to, work with those settings and so on. So that if you like documentation, you can do that. But yes, you should try coding if you want to see how it is. But you need to pick the language that the project is using and learn it.
Yeah, I think this is the only questions we have got. So, like those who are watching and have any questions still left.
Yeah. So one thing I want to add regarding programming languages is that try to think in terms of programming paradigms. A lot of people usually ask, should I learn Python? Should I learn Java? So the focus should be that you learn to program in different paradigms. It is procedural programming, functional programming, object-oriented programming, and logical programming. So when you learn to write in programming languages in all of these different paradigms, then you get an idea as to how to solve problems in these different paradigms. It opens up your mind, it broadens your outlook, and it'll make you think differently. And that is very important because when you're trying to solve a problem, you want to learn to think in different paradigms. And choosing the right paradigm is very, very crucial. So tomorrow, if some programming language X becomes extinct, it doesn't mean that we become jobless, right? Because our foundations and basics and knowledge of paradigms is strong, we will still be able to pick any paradigm or programming language and work on it. So the focus should be on thinking in terms of paradigms, not be very specific to what tools I learn. I think that should be the more broader spectrum that you should think about. Yeah, that's something that I want to add regarding learning programming languages.
Okay, there was one question actually left. Um, okay. However, okay, a question with a huge bias and maybe no right answers. To promote and grow an open source system, it should be adopted and used in light of proprietary system. Okay. However, I still often see a developer community taking more pride in having a Mac than Ubuntu, Fedora systems. Should this be a hypocrisy or purely a need of elegance?
So the choice of the OS is a personal preference. So in an ideal world, right, today we want to have all of the software and hardware verified, formally proved, and make sure that there are no bugs in it. It's an idea. If it's an ideal world, we are not in an ideal world yet. Today, you have an option of using Core Boot or Liberboot as the BIOS. So there is no BIOS vendor lock-in. And you have, of course, Linux as the kernel, and then the whole GNU and other user-land software available to use to have a complete free software environment. The hardware tools are also changing. There are a lot of hardware tools that are being developed and made freely available as in free software. So things are changing. It's not ideal yet. And the most important question I usually ask is, like, do people really know how to assemble a computer, right? And when you really want to learn how the whole system works, whether it is building a kernel or building a compiler, compiling the userland tools, take Linux from scratch, for example, or you take Gentoo, for example, you basically build the whole system from scratch. And I would encourage every user to go through that experience, because you actually learn how the system works. The thing with proprietary systems is they do everything for you, and then you just want to use the userland software. If that's what you want to do, it's up to you. But as an engineer, right, I would expect people to actually learn everything from how the hardware works, how the operating system works, middleware works, how the application works, and so on and so forth. And this free and open source software gives you an option to actually understand and learn how things work. Because when there is a problem, when there's a bug, you actually can go and find out what is happening, which may not be the possibility in proprietary systems, right? So if you want to learn, I would definitely say stick with free, liberal, and open source software. It gives you a wonderful platform for you to learn many things, and it basically improves your skill set and understanding of everything about the system. So if you really, really want to learn and be in the game, continue to grow in your career, it's a wonderful platform to work with. And you don't just want to be an API programmer, right? Then you can just use any proprietary system, but understanding how things work and right from the hardware is a very, very good asset to have. So that's my take on that.
Yeah. So a few more questions. Nishant, like, he struggles many times, what to do to existing projects in terms of coding. Can you suggest a good starting point?
Yeah, so that goes back to the question of what is your interest, right? What is passionate? What is it that really motivates you? It could be any area. So you need to find that. And it's going back to that ice cream example. Like, I don't know what's your favorite ice cream. And as in free and open source software, you don't like to force things on you. Every project has a style of work and a workflow that they have developed that has suited them over time. So you need to sort of gel into that environment or the workflow that they have. So the most important thing is, I would say, take any GNU Linux distribution, install it on your system, start using it. If you're studying, try to see is there any free open source tool that you can use as part of the academic course that you're studying. If you're working, try to find something relevant in that area which you can use. So first, use the software, right? Let's say, for example, you are doing say web development. Then you can look at what IDEs people use, what are the web servers that people use, what type of frameworks are available, and what are things that databases that I can use. So you learn to use all of these tools and try to build an application that solves a specific problem, right? And so you basically learn these tools and you're trying to solve a problem. So the focus should be, what is the problem that you want to solve, which has not been solved before? And how is it that you're doing it better? The question is always, how are we doing better than what was previously done? And that's the important key there, right? So don't pick a project because your friend is working on it. It doesn't make sense. You should justify yourself as to why you're picking this, because you're spending some time on it, right? and you're investing some time and effort on that. So you have to be fully justified as to why you're working on the project. So pick something that interests you. There is no silver bullet, unfortunately. Or you can just pick up the courses that you did in your undergrad and see which one you really liked working with, and then find the existing free and open source software that is available, and then you can start working on it.
Yeah, one question. Should we speak to developers who are working on the project and ask them what they need after using the software? That is okay. Like, should we speak to the developers who are working on the project and then ask them what they need? I mean, he's talking about contribution.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so this is the bazaar style of development, right? You can even go talk to the maintainer or whoever is the lead developer, or and ask them. So even if they don't know, so not everybody in a project might know all the modules, right? They might be owning some specific modules in the project. Even if they don't know, they might say, okay, this person is the one who is maintaining this piece of software. You can talk to so and so person, he or she or whoever it is, and say, this person might be the correct person to talk to, and they might give you a lead to that. So feel free to talk, feel free to ask questions, understand what you're doing. That's more important, because here everything is open and transparent and reviewed, and discussions happening, and it's sort of a double-edged sword, where you can really use it to learn, right, and exchange communication very openly. So feel free to talk to people, ask questions, and that's how you learn.
Yeah. So another question. I mean, Udesh has a question. I explored NumPy, Pandas, Tesseract libraries, but when I actually tried to contribute to these projects, I wasn't not able to fix bugs or make pull requests in huge code bases. Where I'm going wrong?
Right. So when you have a large code base with a large history, um, initially you might not be able to see which module to start with. So that's where the bugs become very useful. So if you take NumPy, whatever project you have focused with, try to look at the issues. I would generally, they will tag them as starter tasks, as I mentioned before, or you just ask them for newbie tasks, things that you can get started with. And so, since you've been using the software, which is good, but the bugs or the issues are a good starting point to, because that's when you start working on those bugs. If you get stuck, it's fine. If you don't understand an error message, it is fine, because you need to learn that, right? So what you need to do is you need to tell them, I did steps A, B, C, and I got this error, and I don't know what to do. Can you please advise me on how to proceed further? The thing is, the communication is that the technical communication, you need to be very specific and more detailed on how to write a bug report, for example. Okay, so when you write detailed with specific command outputs and maybe screenshots, it gives the developers an idea as to what you're trying to do, and that it gives them the notion that you are trying to do something. These are the efforts that you have taken, and you're interested in solving this issue. So if you don't find an answer, it is okay. But what we also care is, what are the steps that you have taken in order to try to solve the issue? Because what the developers will do is they'll retry the whole steps A, B, C, and see if it still causes the error. And then they might, maybe they have little idea about what the module is doing, and they might be able to give a solution to that. So what is important is the steps that you take, and you document it. Maybe you write a blog post about it saying, or we submit a comment on the issue itself and saying, hey, I tried all these steps and this is what I landed in. Can you tell me what to do next? So that effort that you do, the time that you spend there, is very important, right? It basically says, even that is a contribution, right? Because you're trying to triage a bug, you're trying to reproduce the bug, and you're documenting your findings from your system, right? So all that actually counts. Just the answer answer is useful, but all of these steps that you're taking is also important, because when you are working on a feature set and when you are having a bug or a issue, your troubleshooting skills become very, very important. So the end goal is, yes, you want to solve many bugs and issues, but also how do you get there is also very important. So I would suggest you start documenting all of those things, put it up in the mailing list, put it up in the issue tracker, and then you follow up with that. Because the most people I've seen is they just write it in plain English, which is not how developers communicate. You need to be very, very specific, and you should give enough proof in terms of what commands and outputs and screenshots that you have done to justify that you're able to reproduce the error. So technical writing is also very important. Good questions.
Yeah, I think this is the last question we have from Ayush again. What increases job prospects, more contribution to open source or having course certificates from Udemy, Coursera, etc.?
So different people perceive it differently. I think what is important is whether you have the knowledge or not. Whether you learn it through Coursera, whether you learn it through projects, whether you did by reading a book, I think it really doesn't matter. What really matters for a team is whether, given a problem, are you able to tackle it? Are you able to solve it? Right? So there is no single source for learning. Today, you have the opportunity to learn from multiple sources like books, online courses, working on projects, and so on. I would definitely encourage you to look at these different avenues, right? So if you're reading a subject and you want to learn about a subject, say some linear algebra, for example, and you can read the subject from multiple authors, because different people have different ways of expressing content, different ways of writing styles. Some people might prefer a course, some people might prefer reading a book. So that depends on the individual, but you should definitely try to hear from different people on the same subject, because it gives you a different outlook and opinion on what people have to say from different sources. So there is no, it's not mutually exclusive, right? You can learn from different sources at the same time, which is good, because it also helps you it helps you revise the material. And also if somebody has not spoken on a particular subject, you can add that knowledge to you. So it's not this or that, everything is useful.
I think we are done with questions. Thank you guys for having asking questions and keep this talk engaged.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful questions. Do keep in touch, and feel free to write to me if you need more information, and I'll wish you the very best in your projects that you're working with and in your career. And thank you for the organizers as well for having me here.
Yeah. Thank you, Shakti. We have shared the slides on this video description, so feel free to go after this video. Like even if you are seeing later, later the talk is happening, you can always go through these slides and have them. So thank you, Shakti, for joining us. Thank you everybody to listening and for the questions.
Yeah, thank you, and stay safe. Yeah, take care. Yeah, bye bye.
Thank you everybody. Bye bye.